You are listening to episode 215 of Mitolife Radio. I am Matt Blackburn, your host, and today I'm interviewing Victor Sagalovsky for the second time. He is the co-founder of Lightwater, the highest quality deuterium depleted water in the world. And he also has a company called Bee Vitamin, where he provides the highest quality bee pollen, honey, and other products from the beehive. I've been a huge fan of bee products for several years and have tried multiple times with beekeeping, which is a pretty difficult hobby if you're doing it trial and error style. I probably should have done it right and gone to a class, learned about the in and outs, but I just jumped in head first, trial and error. My first hive got knocked down by a black bear several times, and then I gave up for a few years and then tried again. And beekeeping in a northern latitude with snow is no joke. Even when they're inside of a shed, there's a lot to think about and to experiment with. So for now, I am just going to be purchasing bee products from people like Victor. And when I first tried his bee pollen, it blew me away because I've been consuming bee pollen for years and it always had this gritty texture to it. And they were kind of hard and crunchy. His reminded me of candy that melts in your mouth. It was fluffy and not crunchy. And I didn't think that was possible with bee pollen. So in this show, he talks about the benefits of all of the different parts of the beehive: honey, propolis, pollen, royal jelly, even bee venom. He goes into the history of honey and how he sources his honey and pollen from northern Greece and how he found out about it. We also talk about a lot of other stuff. Victor shares his nutrition protocol, sleep tips, how and why to drink deuterium depleted water, and so much more. So enjoy the show. Here is Victor Sagalovsky. All right, Victor Sagalovsky, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, this is round two. I think last time I had you on with Robert Slovak talking about DDW, deuterium depleted water for the layperson.
That's
and
right.
That was a fun chat.
Yeah, we've been doing providing light water, deuterium depleted water for people now for going on 4 years. So it's great. More and more people are recognizing the benefits of being deuterium depleted, and for myself, I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's funny because when I started researching it, I saw the connection with sugar, and I believe I asked you guys about that on the show. And you said sugar inherently contains more deuterium than fatty foods do. And I was doing a high sugar experiment then while drinking 5 ppm DDW, which is hilarious. And now I'm
balance in the middle, right?
right. And now I'm keto and drinking it, and I do feel more of a boost from it, like a benefit.
Yeah, it really works because I'm in my 50s. I heal faster than I did in my 40s, and I heal like I'm in my 20s. And I go to the pool and I can swim a mile. Like I start swimming laps and I go, okay, how many did I swim? Oh, I swam a mile and it was nothing. And I don't train. I'm not an athlete. I wish I did. I'm just too busy trying to run this company. But my point is that the mitochondrial energy is just, it's like perpetual. You're like the Energizer bunny. You just keep going. And I think this is true for any age. Like you could be 90 and be deuterium depleted and just going.
Would you say it's a combination? Drinking the water obviously helps, but also improving mitochondrial function so that you can deuterium deplete yourself?
That's the dirty little secret. It works without it, but with it, it's night and day, night and day, because you not only produce more energy from fat, but it also produces less wear and tear. So it's like two reasons, and it just happens to be what nature gives us. It loads the carbs and depletes the fats. So plus when you eat the fats, it's more efficient. You don't get the hypoglycemic problem, but it's more efficient in the sense that, like, we're engineered to fast, sometimes days between eating, sometimes weeks, just like any predator in nature. And then when we moved into agriculture, we completely changed our genetics and completely changed a lot of things. But we're not genetically predisposed to. We're really, agriculture really did a disservice to us, but it did a big service to warfare. Creating countries, creating societies, putting people all together in one place. Artificial labor, inducing labor to do your bidding, essentially. But if you are, if you are your own person, then you'll do whatever you can to lower your deuterium levels. And man, a ketogenic diet, like I told you, I was doing keto as a vegetarian, primarily raw foodist since the 90s. It was vegetarian keto. And I could do this because in Hawaii, I had the biodiversity, and I was really keen on the fats, the coconut fats, the avocado fats, the pressed oils, the nut fats, anything fermented, things that I can increase the fat content of. So I would even introduce raw cheeses and ghee, because I recognize that to be really just vital. We have just a few things in nature, that the foods that never spoil, they never go bad, and one of them is ghee and the other is honey. So, which I know we're going to talk about. So that's just the clue, like things that are so powerful, in terms of, like, because nothing that we eat makes it into our energy producing pathways, right? It all gets reduced down to the proton before it gets used. It just does. And then it gets reshaped and gets folded and gets replicated and gets transcripted. But that's the thing, it's like, how do you take something that, like, we're essentially a Xerox machine, we're just a copy of a copy of a copy. And so how do you, as you keep going in life, how do you, like biohacking is great, but I'm like, my whole thing now that I tell people is that you're biohacking up to the time you're 50 years old, because you want to push your boundaries. You want to know what this body's capable of. You want to know what you can do. After 50, it really becomes all about geroprotection. If you haven't biohacked it, if you're waiting till 50 to biohack, I'd say it's almost too late, because you're at the point now where you just want to protect what you've gained. Hey, you've proved it to yourself. You've done this, you've done that. Now you want to maintain that. Now becomes the most important thing to do that. You want that feeling of immortality. It's not, you don't have, it's not true, but if you have the feeling of immortality, then if you feel really good, then that changes your outlook in so many ways.
Yeah, great point. And I like what you focus on as far as biohacking. Like you mentioned honey and ghee, which, are not biohacks, but like hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Well, I always ask people, it's a trick question, because no one's given me the answer yet, but I ask them, who was the first biohacker? Because biohacking is this new term that came up, and everybody embraced it because it's kind of like fits what people are doing. They're not quite medical. They're not quite, hippies with the herbs. They're like somewhere in between, using whatever you can to try to understand yourself better. Try to write a manual for your biology. And so I understand that. But before that, that's not like that appeared, and then the word came for it. That existed. That existed for a long, long time. Biohacking existed. It was just called by a different name. So I always ask people, who was the first biohacker? And nobody has gotten this answer right.
Methuselah?
It was Shiva.
Wow.
It was Lord Shiva, because he gave us yoga. He gave us a system. He said, you guys don't know what you're doing. So here's a science. I will download to you a complete science for liberation, enlightenment, self-realization, self-actualization. Just have a great time while you're here and enjoy it and prolong it and really integrate all of your, all of your forms in the multiverse, all of your bodies, so to speak, and where you're a completely integrated being. And so, but this science was given to us by Shiva. He said, here's how you cheat. Here's how you hack. You want to hack? This is what you do. He gave us pranayama, all this stuff, asana, you name it, right? Really esoteric techniques that sometimes translate as stories of people flying in the Himalayas, like levitating, masters on red carpets in the air. But the point is that there's these histories, these stories that we have in human history that point to us having an ability to do things beyond what we know and beyond what we're told. And I always found that fascinating. So, and that to me made life worth living. It's interesting because of the possibility that you have this, you just don't have the manual to do it, but you have the ability. It's just nobody gave you the instruction book. So we're here we are trying to figure it out. And I've always gravitated toward food as medicine. So I always approached it from that angle, from food. And then I learned it's food and breath, and your brain waves, all kinds of things. But that's how I started. That's what helped me initially, was food as medicine. And that was a big revelation, because you are what you eat. And I really took that at heart when I had a crisis. I was 21 years old, and it didn't let me down, because I first pursued raw foodism, as a vegan raw foodism. But then as soon as I realized that diet was really, really good, it was like Atlantean. It's like so really weird and strange. You're dehydrating, fermenting, you're growing sprouts. It's wild, but then as soon as I realized that you needed the fat, I looked at the biochemistry. I was like, oh, but you need the fat. It's like, okay, well, you can have best of both worlds. You can grow your sprouts, and you can have your dairy, and you could have your meats that don't do any harm. Yeah. I'm not talking about doing harm to the planet. I'm talking about doing harm to you. So you have to have an intelligence, or you just look at the way your ancestors did it, because they weren't faking it.
Right. Are you still growing sprouts? I used to do that, and I stopped, but I'm thinking about getting back into it.
I don't have any right now, but normally, yes, I have I've been traveling, but normally I have just sunflower sprouts. The sunnies are great. It's a great green, to eat. It's got a lot of energy in it, because sunflowers are quite unique in that they follow the sun during the day. Like, they've got the kinetics of movement, like watching bamboo grow. It's got energy to follow the sun. And it gets really tall. So if you capture it at the sprout, it's got the potential of that giant plant, and you're just taking that life force for yourself. So yeah, it's great in a salad with a bunch of ghee.
I'm going to get back into it. I wanted to ask you, Victor, do you believe in you can handle more carbs when you live in a sunny place, like Southern California or Texas versus North Idaho, there's no fruit.
I don't think anybody can handle carbs. I think it's just a necessity that we've conditioned ourselves to do, because potatoes are a great carb, but it's still a carb. Rice is that, wheat even buckwheat to a point.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not really meant for this. It's just we, agriculture was created to create war, because if you could store your grain, if you could store your food, then you can get people to do something other than look for food. I mean, we're pretty. If you're the forager, if you're the nomad herdsman, you're walking with your flock of sheep or goats or cattle, but that's your primary food source. But you need to go where there's more food for them, and then you're foraging for things along the way. Maybe you've got orchards that you planted along the way, but you're migrating. As soon as someone said, grow in this field, eat what we grow in this field, store it in that warehouse, now you can make war. And it's a cheap fuel. It's like the car won't last very long with that cheap fuel. They don't care. They don't care and so you see this genetically as people that eat a lot of grain versus their cousin that ate a lot of meat. They're different in body structure, height, strength, virility. It's quite shocking, actually, what can happen to a person that's genetically over time is exposed to too much grain, carbs. Yeah. And then, not to mention that the grain that people eat now, if it's wheat is the primary grain of people on the planet. It's a polyploid. It's not even the original grain. Original grain had 2 chromosomes. I think they're up to 4 or 6 now. So it's not. You'd have to go to farro or kamut even, but not as good, to get the original unhybridized. So you're eating hybrid. I always stay away. It pains me because there's a lot of food I don't get to enjoy because I won't eat anything that's seedless. Just won't do it. I don't like those kind of polyploids. So, and they're making more and more things. They got seedless lemons now, for God's sake.
Wow. Yeah, that's rough. Well, I like what you said about human potential. I've noticed this apathetic kind of perspective throughout my life, working at different jobs and just seeing what my coworkers ate and managers ate and how they lived their life. It was just very depressing, and that kind of launched me into or amplified my interest in the study of human health, because most people don't care, right? I mean, from my observation,
that's what happened to me. Okay, I was being groomed to become the youngest agent in Hollywood, and I helped sell a screenplay. I was 23 years old for $1.2 million, and everybody in the office loved me because I just came in out of the nowhere, and I just was like, I was the magic assistant, could do anything, and we celebrated, and they said, get anything you want, this is a big day. And it's in the mid 90s, and so everybody in the office wanted Taco Bell. I just sold a script for over $1.2 million. They wanted Taco Bell. I got my lunch from a guy on the side of the road with a bunch of fruit. And I went back to the office and I said, this is not the life I want. I don't have anything common with these people. These people, I mean, at best, they could have ordered like something gourmet from a restaurant because they just closed a giant deal. They could have got like pastrami sandwiches or Monte Cristos, but no, they wanted Taco Bell. So yes, I can relate to what you're saying. It's just to me, it was a completely foreign. They just had nothing in common with people that didn't understand that aspect of themselves, that you are you're be intelligent with your choices when it comes to diet and food, and pay attention. And that's what shocked me the most is that here I am, not too smart, a little educated, but at least I was doing my best to pay attention to things. And I'm around people that are successful in their business with money and all this stuff, but that they're not paying attention to the same things that I'm paying attention to. And, I think I made the right choice because here I am. And for the last 30 plus years, I realized that, you can heal yourself through diet. I've never had I've never had it. I perform nothing but optimally. And when I haven't, I would search for something that would allow me to do that through my intuition. And that's when light water came to me and deuterium depletion. I didn't overlook it. 2004, I read an article about DDW. I go, this is huge. Yeah, even though nobody else knows about it, this is freaking huge because I want long-term health, and I don't want to have to work hard for it.
Yeah.
So, I want it to come easy because it should. And so I'm just following these things that logically make sense. If you know a little bit, if you study biochemistry for one freaking year, just 1 year, you'll, with a good ability for critical thinking and how to ask the right questions, I'll give you that. But if you just do it for 1 year, you'll start to understand like what works and what doesn't. And you'll never have this identity as a seeker, a hypochondriac that's constantly in a health crisis looking for the next answer.
I love that. That's super cool. Yeah. It's amazing. My cat's here sitting as my co-pilot, so it's distracted me. But if you know anyone that's giving DDW to their cats, I don't know if I'm the only one, but that's all they drink.
Yeah, there's some people giving it to their dogs. I think some to their cats. They notice that I warn them, you're gonna have a faster animal on your shoulders. They're gonna be more. Cats are so interesting because the best. If you want to do a down and dirty assessment of your mitochondrial health, right? You want to really get into biohacking. You want to know how good your mitochondrial health is. So the easy way to do it is to test your reaction time. Okay. Because reaction time, the most mitochondria is in the back of the eyeball here, right? The retina. So, and when you could do it on your computer or your phone, you test your reaction time. That perfectly mates the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. You need both to get a reaction time. Wow. So the reaction is quick because the mitochondria in your eyes went boom. They say they're sending the signal of the finger to press the button, right? So it comes to the eyes. So my reaction time is pretty good. Like I could still probably try to drive NASCAR or F1. I mean, on a good day, it could be around 200 or 190 milliseconds. That's freaking good for any age. For any age, that is excellent reaction time. And if I'm lazy, 300. Okay. Now, most people are 500-700 milliseconds.
Wow.
You know what the reaction time of a cat is?
What?
50 milliseconds.
Wow. Because mine have full claws, and if you touch your cat in the wrong
50
spot.
That's why it can take on a cobra. That's why they can go on it. That's why they can handle their own against a snake.
That's incredible.
At best, we can do 200 milliseconds. The best humans can maybe do 150. Maybe there's a guy out there that could do 90. Cats naturally 50 millisecond reaction time.
So they're good training partners.
They will cut your face off before you even know it. They're they're all little Bruce Lees,
That's incredible. I'm pretty good at avoiding the claws when they swat me. I mean, they've got me a few times.
You want to build your reaction time? Get a cat. Seriously, they react. That's why they can. If you give them like that puzzle, or what's that called? Like when you got that little game with the 3 coconut shells, and you got to find where it goes. The ball. Dogs and cats are better at that than humans.
Wow.
And chimpanzees can recall more words, can recall more information for a period of time. Like if I say, remember the number 1, then the number 2, then the number 5, it can, and then keep stringing that along, how many words you can remember or numbers. Chimpanzees actually have better recall like that than humans. So we're just we're barely good at a few things, and we really exploit those few things, really. But yeah, we're not good at reaction time. Our smell, we can't. Our eyesight, our smelling, we're not. Eagles can see 10 times better. Dogs can smell like 50 times better. I mean, we're nothing special about us except this conflict between the reptilian brain and the frontal lobes.
Yeah.
They keeps us moving forward.
Have you seen Audi's working on like an augmented reality car? And I think they're going to start building that into cars, so basically allowing us to see more and faster, kind of like Google Glass, but like built into your vehicle. I think we're going to see more of that stuff.
That's interesting. That reminds me of a tracking technique Native Americans use, where you want to jump into parasympathetic really quick. You go into wide angle vision and you really focus on what's happening out here. And then you go and then you just everything. If you could do it perfectly, if you're well at it, then everything will change. It's an amazing way to change your physiology just by throwing your attention to the peripheral and not the direct. It's like I said, we don't have the manual to this body. We got to figure it out as we go along.
Yeah. Years ago, I heard, I think it was from Robert Cassar, that he saw someone breathe underwater. I'm like, unless we could like genetically modify someone to have gills.
My friend said he did it on acid. I don't know. I don't believe him.
Stuff like that. I wonder if we need, the Star Wars, James Bond kind of thing, or, some external.
There's 8 ppm, about roughly 8 parts per million of oxygen in water, and that's what keeps the fish alive. If it drops to 0, your lake will be dead. Everything inside it will be dead. So, yeah, just a matter of being able to get that 8 ppm to work for us. And maybe we can, because according to our physiology, we don't breathe for oxygen. We only need 1 breath per minute. Technically, we only need 1 breath per minute to live. The only reason we breathe constantly is because we are exhaling CO2. So if we get the CO2 problem somehow fixed, then then we could exist a minute underwater at a time. Just 1 breath is needed. Again, there's that manual we keep trying to find. Maybe it got lost with Atlantis. I don't know.
Right. I'm looking to get back into scuba diving. I really miss it. I did tons of night dives, and there's kind of a correlation a little bit with hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Well, there is. I mean, absolutely there is. When you're under that far, you will get hyperbaric. Except your hyperbaric becomes nitrogen, right? Mm-hmm. It's nitrogen tank that you're doing. And I question these things because like I said, I like swimming. And when you're swimming, you're mouth breathing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a mouth breather. I'm a nose breather. And so that is unnatural to me, but at the same time, it's a good workout and I enjoy it. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, get into beet products, because we can go on forever. That's the subject of the show.
We need to seg you into how do we smoothly transition to bee products from this?
Well, it was talked about in a lot of like biblical texts or ancient texts, right? I know the Bible talks about honey.
I went to a Hare Krishna potluck when I was young, and I go, what is this food? They go, well, we try to feed Krishna. And then I realized what they're making didn't feed Krishna, but it made me curious. I went into the Vedic texts and I looked at, what does Krishna eat? Because Krishna is a big deal, and Krishna ate milk and honey. So I'm like, well, if that's good enough for Krishna, can't be bad for us. So truly, good dairy and bee products together that is just, you're now eating the food of you're eating the food of the gods. Okay. And dairy alone is if you got the good dairy, that's only one piece. The second piece is the honey, the bee products. And I was, this is when I said sugar no more, when I cut off sugar in my early 20s, I needed a sweetener, and I discovered honey, and I found this little book. I still have it somewhere, a little a little kind of 20-page book. And it says, honey's not honey's not a food, honey's a universe. And it is. And it's really just the concentration. It's really just the nectar of nature. It's a concentrate of whatever localized natural environment exists, and it's the essence of that. It's the best of that. These little honeybees, they're trying to feed themselves, and you're taking their food from them. But it's like anything good, everybody else is going to want it. It's like Manhattan real estate. If everybody wants it. So the bees create something really, really good. And it's not all bees, you're not gonna get wasp honey, So I learned a lot about it. And so it was important to me because I had a sweet tooth. And as soon as I learned that there was a sweetener that I could eat, and trust me, I've overdone it too in my early 20s. But as soon as I learned that I could overdo it on raw honey, I did. But it's great. It's a great food. And the bee pollen, wow. I mean, you turned me on to the work of Morley Robbins, right? And from Morley, I got the whole copper thing, right? Even though I already had a bit of a clue into the metalloproteins and copper and all that, but he really just opened my eyes to what's going on with the iron conspiracy and everything that you and him talk about. And I love his work. And then he talks about bee pollen being the highest natural source of copper. I go, duh, of course. It's just concentrated pollen. It's like, where do you find the most copper? It's going to be in the liver of an animal or the pollen of a plant, the organs or the germ, So realize that, this is now I'm all into this copper stuff. I'm all into the whole copper thing now. I think it's going to take time, but I think eventually it'll change my life.
I think it's a balance of the zinc. I mean, I'm supplementing zinc now, and I don't think it's
zinc is so easy to come by, though. It's so easy to come by because it's in food. It's a good diet. You get plenty of zinc.
But I wonder, I've been plant-based for almost my whole life, so it's like, I don't know. I feel like if someone's vegetarian or vegan, they tend to get a ton of copper and not enough zinc, which you could have. You need to catch up.
And then there's the iron binding foods. And I love the fact that even exists, because now I'm like, oh my God, it's an iron conspiracy. I got to get it out of my body. And it's true. We only need 1 milligram of iron per day, and everything else we recycle. So by the time we're 18, according to Morley, we're 18, we have all the iron that we need. And so I'm like, this is wild.
There is a lot of nuance, though, because it's absorbed iron, not total iron, because we don't absorb all of the iron we consume. So there's a ton of
course.
We don't absorb all the plant iron we eat, but if you eat a lot of animal iron, then you could be loaded to the gills in it, right? Potentially. I tend to run more on the iron deficiency, and I found that when two blood donations took me over the edge, and so I've been just coming back to balance. I think it's becoming mainstream now. Like Mercola's talking about iron overload, but I think it's both. It
totally resonates for me, and it's totally since you gave me that clue, it's totally I feel it's
an issue for some people, not everyone. Yeah,
I feel like it's been a big piece of another major puzzle piece.
Mm-hmm.
Truly,
that's awesome.
Truly, because we have overloaded ourselves with too much iron, and I understand that. That's why they call the royals blue bloods, right? They know. I mean, this is a whole conspiracy theory, but there's a bit of truth to that. Is that knowledge that it's better to be copper based? And someone told me this back when I was first learning about how to make ormus, and I was in that community in the late 90s, early 2000s. The whole blue blood thing and the whole copper blood thing was really a topic that was discussed a lot. So I think that these like eggs and good cheeses, like aged cheeses, I think these are great foods, and they bind iron. I think if you overconsume meat, then I think, yeah, you will have too much. You can't get too much iron, and you have to be careful. Like there's a whole debate now uh, with N-glyconeurominic acid, and I don't know where you stand on the side of that one, but I know a lot of people that will not give up their carnivore ways because they don't think it's real, and I have got some other ideas about that.
I still need to dive into that one. I will say excess copper is associated with, or does cause directly, schizophrenia and other neurological, psychological problems.
Well, then and then you have to look at copper 1 versus copper 2, because you don't want the wrong copper. If you get the wrong copper, that's like poisoning yourself.
but ascorbic acid, which I sell, converts copper. I always get it confused. Copper 2 to
copper 2 to 1.
Yeah. So
does
it's
it
like,
really?
Okay. Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's in the literature. So it's, wow. I mean, there's so many details. I love the nuance and details to this. My issue is when a whole camp that has a coaching program says this is the way for everybody. I will always disagree with that, and that's why I'm the black sheep.
Well, for me, I pick up on these things, and then I process it through my intuition. And if it lines up, if it checks out with what, because if you can muscle test yourself, your body, you'll know if your body wants something or if it doesn't. It'll make its voice known. You can force it, and you can do it to the point where you're in danger of never being able to listen to anything what your body tells you. But if you listen, then it has to pass the smell test there, right? It has to pass the spidey sense. So for me, yeah, the copper, and I don't do it every day. I know the thing is that nothing. I don't think anything should be done every day. I think that's a ridiculous notion, and that right there is first thing to look at. I mean, yeah, breathing. You should breathe every day, but everything else you could kind of limit, and you can play around with, and that's the dance of life, is that rhythm. But yeah, so the bee, back to the bee products, back to the.
Well, I wanted to ask you in relation to keto, because some people say sugar is sugar, and people are probably confused. Like, is honey equivalent to white sugar? But there are studies showing it. It's not. We're not talking about taking a whole jar, but like 1 tablespoon a day could help improve insulin resistance, right?
Well, here you go. Okay, here you go. You got to have, like, I've gone the extreme keto, dry fasting, blah blah blah, and the truth be known, it's good to be 100% keto as long as you keep your glycogen stores at 100%. Your glycogen is important, and your glycogen is formed from it's formed from, you got to have sugar, carb. So as long as your glycogen stores are plenty, then you've got enough oomph when you need it. So yeah, that's why carbs are important in that sense. You can't take them out completely. We have adapted a way to store the energy from that, right? And glycogen. So, and it's not good to not have any glycogen. It's just not good. So, in that respect, it's a balance, and that's why. And you just look at nature. Your glycogen stores go up in the spring. In the fall. When you harvest time, when you have the fruits of the trees. Berries, yeah, and then sure enough, primitive man found honey, and honey was concentrated. It was concentrated energy, so that was very valuable because caloric density is life, and at one time it mattered a lot more than it does now. Right now it doesn't matter but remember, at one time we didn't have supermarkets and grocery stores. Most people would die. I mean, like 95% of the population on the earth would die if they didn't have a grocery store. And humanity didn't have grocery stores. So caloric density of your food was a make it or break it thing. And also how long you preserve it for. So honey, you can eat honey that's 2,000 years old. It's still good.
Why does it in It's Egypt, right?
Yeah, in the tombs, and it's still good. I had honey that was over 100 years old,
Wow.
and it's still good because it's of a crystalline nature. It crystallizes. It crystallizes, so the crystallization gives it life, or it doesn't allow anything else to come into it and to spoil. So it's antibacterial, antimicrobial. So it's a living. That's why it's a universe, and it's complete, and it digests itself eventually. It doesn't taste the same later because it does digest itself. But yeah, so it's profound. It's from nature, and we learned this animal husbandry with bees, and then when we got into apiculture, we discovered that who are these guys? Who are these dudes? We discovered something about bees that was like one, they shouldn't be able to fly, the mast to wing, it shouldn't happen. So, but they do somehow fly, and they have this, and then they have this hierarchy in their, they have the queen, and they could feed any bee the royal jelly, and it will become the queen, and the queen, and then you have the protectors and the workers. It's like, what a society you guys got going on here.
The bee documentaries, I love them when it goes into the hive and all the different roles.
And they're intelligent. They have their moods. They get hungry. They get angry. They get happy. These are full on self-aware creatures, but there's a tragedy to them because they are really just like, they have they're like, it's like the army, you're like, they're not free, they're not free. They're workers, and even the queen has a function. They all have a it's amazing, really. And then so my friend, so I went looking all around the world. Technically, truly, I contacted everybody else: South America, North America, Europe, everywhere, really, Asia, Australia, trying to find the best bee pollen, because I realized that whatever bee pollen I was able to buy in the United States could not be organically certified. Bees fly for 5 miles, so there's no possible way you could certify bee pollen organic unless it was a monocrop agriculture type scenario. And I said, no, I don't want that kind of bee pollen. That's not good. So clover or almond, almond. You could have almond bee pollen, but that's all it would be. There would be it wouldn't be natural because it's monocrop. So I got samples from all around the world, and then I got a sample from Greece, which was like 10 times better than anywhere else. So I went over there, and this is northern Greece. This is like the foothill of the Alps. It's like you got the coast, so you got the sea, and then you have the foothills of the Greek Alps, which I didn't even know they had Greek Alps, but it's pristine. Almost nobody lives there. There's just not even any roads. It's all dirt roads and barely that. And my friend started an apiary there, organically certified, which is a pain, but he really got into this. It's his wife's family's land, and this is ancestral. Like, there's native bees, there's bees that he cultivated, but it's a great Mediterranean climate, and it's recognized as one of the most biodiverse areas in the world. And so all the self-sown herbs, those Mediterranean herbs that we love, that make up world cuisine, you can name them off. There's like 10 really high quality aromatic herbs. These grow naturally in this bioregion, in this forest. And depending where he moves the hives, he gets different ones. So it's great, because I went over there, and it was not only was lush and beautiful and everything, even more than I thought it would be in terms of, for somebody that just loves biodiversity and agriculture and organics. I also learned about something known as honeydew honey. And do you know what honeydew honey is?
No.
Honeydew honey would be honey like, I have some here. So this is red fir honey, and this is oak tree honey, and then there's a pine. There's a pine honey that I don't have here, and then there's a chestnut.
I have those two at my house. The first two you mentioned.
The first two, yeah. And then there's a pine and a chestnut. And then you think about how honey is made, and you go, well, wait a second. If you know how honey, where honey comes from, you go, how the heck does it get honey from trees? Because normally honey comes from the pollen of the flower, and then that flower is made into honey, bee spew essentially. And how does that work? And with the trees, because trees don't really have flowers. Some trees have flowers. What the heck's going on? Turns out that honeydew means that there's a larvae that lives on the tree that eats the leaves, okay, and or the new leaves and the flower. I don't know about if it eats the flowers or not, but it's a larvae, so it's an insect. And this insect, the bees eat the excrement of the insect. Okay.
Wow. Wow.
It's insect shit.
Is that high in deuterium?
I mean, maybe it is. It just depends where on the tree it's coming from. Because the higher it is, the less deuterium, right?
Right.
So maybe it has less because they like to eat the new things, you know. Mm-hmm. So the bug digests, concentrates the sugar, and then the bee picks that up and makes the honey. And this honey it's revered. It's some of the most coveted. Historically, it's the honey that the kings wanted to have, the honeydew. They wanted the caterpillar shit. But the oak one specifically. Now, the oak one is the one that the studies were done at the university in Greece, in Athens, or Thessaloniki, I think, somewhere university in Greece. But it may be true for fir, it may be true not for chestnut necessarily, but could be true for fir and the fir and the oak. So anyway, the oak or the pine. It could be true for the pine. So the oak honey, it was found it has the same kind of microbial activity, same kind of antimicrobial properties as the best Manuka. So if you get a cut or something or a burn, you just slather this oak honey on your wound, and it's super antibacterial. So,
wow. Yeah, that was what we had listeners send in questions, and I got a bunch about Manuka honey. And I remember when I started seeing that at Costco, I was like,
Well, there's grades of Manuka honey. Right. And then there was when I lived in Kauai, there was a great company, which is defunct now, in the 90s, called Sandwich Isle Honey Company. And they harvested the Kiave honey from Niihau, from the island, the privately owned island owned by the Robinsons off of Kauai. And this Kiave honey only comes, one other place is on Big Island, and Kiave is mesquite, and it's got the long needles that'll just hurt you. And it grows in arid climates. That's almost like a desert. It's a white honey. Fantastic. It's pure. The better it is, the purer the white it is. It's the only white honey out there. It's fantastic. So there's a lot of different honeys. When I was in India, I discovered neem honey. Then I discovered the tribal honeys there. The Aboriginals in southern India had their own. They had the forest honeys, the old growth forest honeys, which is very complex in flavor. But the neem honey would just blow you away. Delicious, incredible, and incredibly antibacterial, obviously. So in Europe and in Greece, my friend really went after not only does he do the honeys that are the come from the herbs and the pollens of the forest, but the trees, the pine forest, the oak forest, the fir forest, the chestnuts are the other three I just named are wild. The chestnuts were just an orchard of chestnuts that he planted and gets chestnut honey. So and this is a cycle of life happening there. It's undisturbed. It's like I like to invest agriculturally or my time or an interest of getting food from somewhere. I always look at the area that has never seen the plow. Right. You go if you get your food from a forest that never saw the clearing of the land, it still has that fairy magic that was completely robbed when when it was stripped of everything and so violently, so quickly. So,
Wow.
that's why Brazil, I was always into Brazil nuts from the very early, because it's a wild harvested food, and wild harvested foods have an energy to them. There's a difference in, there's a difference in getting almonds from your almond tree in your orchard, in your biodiverse orchard of trees, of edible fruit and nut trees, and getting a almond from the monocrop almond farms, thousands of acres in Central California. It's gonna be a different taste, guaranteed, completely.
Well, on that topic, so I think this is my second or third try at beekeeping, and I failed. It's really hard in the winter, and I have them in a shed and stuff.
Yeah, that's the problem, is the winter.
Yeah, I did try the flow hive, and they're buried in the snow. I threw them in the trash because I realized they don't disclose, they don't work in freezing temperatures. The trays break. So those only work when you live somewhere where it never gets below 32 Fahrenheit. So
if you give them enough food in the winter, they will hibernate, and they just need food. They need, like everything in nature that uses mitochondria.
Right.
They need food.
It's amazing though. They'll throw the dead ones out of the entrance. Like they go and collect the dead bodies and toss them out. Like it's incredible.
Wow. They have a whole society. It's all fully baked. They probably hold elections and things too.
Well, I'm thinking if I do end up, getting a second home somewhere warmer, I'm thinking of trying the flow hive again, because it is easier. But you just have to know it doesn't work in northern latitude.
My friend makes all his own whatchamacallit, the trays, and that's a great way to explain away people come and say, well, you're just exploiting the bee, you're stealing from this poor, innocent, naked creature, and you're taking all of its food from it. And the argument goes, well, if you look at a beehive normally, and you compare that to a beehive that was created by man and provided for the bee, you're talking the difference between a mud hut and luxury accommodations.
Right.
You're in a luxury high rise now. You're in Trump Tower. So the bee gets a benefit, right? The bee gets a benefit. They get, definitely, and it likes that hive, because if it didn't, it would say, I don't want to live here. So it's a bit of the rent. It's a little rent. The bee pollen's a little bit of rent. Honey's a bit of the rent, but
and you could soup it up, right? I've seen people put lodestones around their hive, and
the bees love it. They're happy about it. They don't care that you're taxing them. They just want to make sure that they have enough for themselves, and that's the job of a great beekeeper or somebody. And most beekeepers that are doing this for a living, unlike my friend, that's a labor of love, they're feeding them sugar in the winter. Mm-hmm. Or corn syrup, or whatever crap they can buy, high fructose garbage. And my friend, actually, if you're going to be a successful in apiculture, you have to plant. So what he did is, obviously there's milder winters there than you are in Idaho, but around his area, around where where he moves hives around, right, to the mountains, depending where the food is. But in the winter, they're close to home. And he just planted a food forest for them. Wow. So, he was thinking ahead, the food forest is for the bees. You don't want them to go hungry, and you don't want to feed them crap. They're not going to be happy, fully vibrant beings. They're just like humans. You can dull their energy, you can dull their spirit, you can dull their life force, or you can let it express itself. And the food they give you will reflect that. So if you're eating clover honey, you probably just might as well eat white sugar.
Yeah, the house I grew up in San Diego, we had a big bush surrounding our house from the neighbor's house, and I remember every summer there'd just be hundreds of bees for months on that bush. And I feel like it doesn't take much if you just plant some strategically in some areas, some flowers and stuff. You can really supply them.
They don't need, that's really the function of man, of human on this planet. Even though we screwed it up, our function is to just help out, right? Hey, plant some trees for the bees, help look at that turtle that's on its back, help it get back on its feet. We're just helpers here. That's what we got. We got prehensile thumbs, frontal lobes. We can help out, change divert a stream so the salmon get an easier break, but we've totally messed the plot,
Mm-hmm.
Totally. But that's what we are. We're helpers. And if we help our environment, the trees, you could even say the trees allowed us to evolve, or they created us because they have roots. So they needed us to move their seeds around. So if an avocado wanted to get to India or Thailand, it's a Mexican tree. How's it going to get there? Well, it's going to get there by plane because it makes the humans get there by boat. It's going to help. It's going to allow the evolution. It's going to, it's going to, it's a synergistic effort along with the consciousness of the universe to create a conscious being that can migrate that seed from one place to the other. When a dog or an animal, a wolf or a bird doesn't quite do it, because you need these things, you need prehensile thumbs, and the dolphins said no, we don't want it. If you take an X-ray of a dolphin, you'll see it's polydactyl. It has 5 fingers. So at some point, it made that conscious choice to say, I don't want it. And the reason it said that was because it looked at this 5 fingers and said, this is going to get me in trouble. So I'm just going to go back in the ocean, make love all day long and eat fish and float around weightless, because these things, this is just going to get you in trouble.
Yeah. I've always said that if I could pick what animal I would be, it'd be a dolphin. It seemed pretty awesome.
Well, they got it pretty good. They're the apex. They don't really have a predator. Mm-hmm. So you're good there. Yeah, you could be a whale or a dolphin. Absolutely. You just don't have fingers. You don't have 5 fingers or arms. But they have brains bigger than ours. And at some point, their intelligence said, if I go down the evolutionary path of having hands and things that can grab, like Zorba the Greek says, God gave man hands to grab. So, they said it was just going to get him in trouble. And I said, we don't need it. Just go the other way. Go evolve. They made this conscious decision, but these hands have got us what we want, but it's also put us at great peril in many respects. So use your hands wisely, because they're just nerves. They're just tendrils. They're the proboscis of your brain.
What do you think about this prepping combo? I had this theory. I'm not a doomsday prepper. I have some people up here in Idaho that are like, it's going to end next month always. But honey and bee pollen is a prepping food.
Well, bee pollen,
right?
Except bee pollen, you need to refrigerate.
Oh, okay. So
it needs to be in freezer or fridge. Yeah, you cannot. Okay. Now, what you could do is you could mix that honey with the bee pollen.
Make bee bread.
And then it's safe. And here's something else I discovered. And I didn't know this, like a fool, because it's the thing. You learn, no matter how old you get, you learn something new every day. And if you don't, then you're doing it wrong. So I learned that if you eat bee pollen, you eat those delicious, tasty, fluffy grains. You're only getting like 30-40% of the value. It's not assimilating. You have to put it in water.
Right. I remember you told me that when I first tried your bee pollen, and I think they've done.
When I was eating bee pollen for decades before I read the science. I found one day I found the science.
Yeah.
The science said you got to put it in. So now it's like you put this bee pollen in water, stir it up. It's like nectar. It's yummy. It's tasty.
And it's immediate. You don't have to let it sit.
Just stir it up. It doesn't take more than 30 seconds.
Wow.
Maybe a minute, you dissolve it. But the our bee pollen is very fluffy. It's fresh. It's not hardened. It's not crystallized. So you can put it in water real quickly. What I do is whatever I'm adding to water, I don't use a blender. I just use a mixer, like a vortexer, like a lab mixer. So put a lab mixer, water, boom, walk away for a minute, come back. Everything is nice and nice and homogenized in that respect. So yeah, like I started making, like I love coconut water, but I know it's high in deuterium. I love coconut water. So I got dehydrated coconut powder and started making deuterium depleted coconut water.
Wow.
And I love it. A little squeeze of lime. Oh, it's wonderful.
It's not high in sugar, the powder? Or...
Well, thing is, the powder may be, but the water is deuterium depleted. So the powder is just your, it's just your, you know, it's just your accent. It's yeah, it's sugar, of course, but it's complex. It's more than just sugar. Mm-hmm. You know, there's all kinds of monolawrence and all kinds of tasty little molecules in there. Mm-hmm. It's just the water has been taken out.
Interesting.
So, and you could even taste I could even taste the age, because I know about coconuts. I had a coconut company. I know everything there is to know about coconuts, you know, with due respect to anybody else who thinks they know a thing or two. But I know everything about coconuts. And I can taste the age of the nut based on that powder. And I'm like, oh, this is a 8.5 month coconut. How can I get it? I want a coconut that's 12 month, because it'll be sweeter. It'll be more interesting.
Wow.
So I think it's good to have a clean palate, just like you want to preserve your hearing. As you get older, you also want to preserve your palate. And there are many temptations throughout the course of our life, whether conscious or unconscious, to completely corrupt our palate. I have a clean palate, thank goodness. And I've managed to preserve my hearing as best as I could. So, you know, these are the senses you have, you know, that enjoy them.
Back in my raw vegan days, I used to buy the packaged coconut meat. Have you had that, where it's just in the pouch and it's just the washed, cleaned coconut meat? And I would just eat that.
I like it. Yeah, I mean, you know, something to be said for the coconut. Mighty coconut is, it gives you food, it gives you water, it gives you shelter, it gives you rope. I mean, it's all in one, but it is high in deuterium. And but if you're living on a desert island, I think that's the last of your worries.
Right. So the beehive. So you talked a little bit about honey, bee pollen. There's also 3 more, right? There's propolis, royal jelly, and then venom.
Oh my God. You know, people ask me, so I can show you the studies. That there's a great study, and I like to show this to people because I didn't pay for this study. It was done by somebody else. There's a study out of China that showed deuterium depleted water, drinking it or putting it on topically, and it'll make your collagen grow. You'll have more collagen than somebody that's not deuterium depleted. You have better, and what's collagen? Better looking skin, you know? So yeah, deuterium depletion does help skin integrity, collagen. But what else helps is propolis. So I get this. So we sell this salve. My friend, the beekeeper over there in Greece, his wife, when I was over there, she gave me this salve that she made with propolis and local herbs and their own olive oil. And you know, normally salve is for hands and stuff. And I started using this salve on my face. It's awesome. I think it's better than what people charge hundreds of dollars for. It's just like $15 salve. And you just do this, heat it up in your palm really good, you know, and put it all over your face. And people ask me like, wow, is your skin glows, you know, for your age? I said, well, you know, deuterium depletion and bee propolis with they go, no, that's not it. If I'm telling, I don't have to tell you my secret. I could lie. I could say none of your business. But I tell you exactly what's working for me. And then they go, no, but that can't be it. I answered your question.
And St. John's wort too, right? Is in there.
It's in there. St. John's wort is in there. It's nice and calming effect. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I love that salve. All your products are incredible. And I was skeptical when you gave me a bottle. I was like, oh, whatever. I've had bee pollen. And I just took some straight on a spoon. You were there with me in person. I was like, wow, this is an experience. It was fluffy, like you said.
It's because I got into bee products, and I'm an Epicurean of sorts, especially when in my raw vegan days. I want the best of the best, and I realized that if you want the best, you better go find it. And when I found it, I'm like, this is way better than a lot of other things. So otherwise, I wouldn't waste my time. It's why I'm pretty much the person that came up with raw chocolate, raw cacao, because I got fortunate when I lived on the Big Island and I leased 5 acres of a 5-acre chocolate farm, which had many different varieties on it. I learned everything there is to know about chocolate, and I learned that there's other techniques to give you good tasting chocolate other than roasting the shit out of it. And then I realized why they roasted the shit out of it too, because it's a way to hide that you're selecting from a wide variety of quality and not just the best of the best.
A copper-rich food, by the way, right? Cacao,
yeah, copper-rich food. Why? I mean, it's high in fat, and anything. I think all seeds in the proper soil would be copper-rich. I think if you're like, I started doing what Morley and other people or other podcasts I listen to on this copper craze. Like, okay, well, copper one's expensive. Like I buy that company Mito Synergy, and that's expensive.
He just passed. I met him, and then he passed a month later after a
he
conference.
Died.
Yeah, and I don't want to speculate, but it seems fishy.
What's going on?
A lot of people have been dying recently.
But what do you think of what do you think of that product?
I think it's good. I mean, copper niacin, right? I think
copper niacin,
B3 is so powerful, whether it's niacin or niacin.
But he died. So who gets is that the product? Will the product go away?
I think his brother's carrying it on, and then there's like one or two other companies that are selling it.
So what I started doing, it's expensive. So what I started doing, I started feeding my sprouts copper sulfate. So like, okay, well, my sprouts will be copper rich, and I don't have to pay a buck a pill.
Right.
So there's ways, right? There's ways. As long as you know that if you have this copper, inorganic copper, and you could feed it to a animal or plant, and you could eat that plant or animal, then you can get copper.
I asked him straight. So we were there at the conference. He said, let me take you up to the hotel room. I'll look at your blood and I'll show you that copper bisglycinate is poison. And then I kept bringing up ascorbic acid. I was like, what about AA and how it can switch and transmute? And he wouldn't give me a response to that. And I take AA daily. I'm a huge fan of vitamin C.
But you mean the synthetic, the straight isolate. Straight ascorbic acid.
Yeah, just capsule, with
not buffered by its flavonoid compounds and chaperones, just straight.
Yeah, I mean, I sell it and I combine it with whole berry extracts, so it's a blend of different berry extracts with it.
Okay, but yeah, you blend it after the fact. Yeah, you get
right.
And what is the source of the ascorbic acid? Where does it come from?
Well, I mean, it's all lab made. I was into the whole food vitamin C.
They derive it from different. Sometimes they get it from corn. Sometimes they get it from sorghum.
Right.
They get it from different things.
Yeah. People freak out about the black mold, but that's not ascorbic acid. That's something else. So I don't know. I'm starting to question. I mean, it's like, what's methylene blue sourced from? I don't know, but it works.
Well, it's a synthetic. It's not what it's sourced from. It's what the final product looks like.
Right.
But a lot of time, but yeah, I mean, having done lab chemistry, I know that is, you can, that's the if the molecule you're looking for is in your hand. So it's just but how does the body respond to something that isn't complex with its natural components? That's the big question. But a lot of times it doesn't matter. Like we can fool ourselves. We're realizing that we have a reptilian mammalian brain and we're easy to fool. We can fool ourselves. It's truly VR, all that stuff.
Right.
Red light is, look, you're just fooling the body. I think it's getting sun,
Why? I look at these things as tools, because up here we don't get IR or UV for 6 months.
Like, the question is how do you thrive in outer space, right? If you're living in a spaceship and you're trying to maintain your humanness and not get all pale and bug-eyed like a gray alien. How do you do that? And I think we're just tuning into that, deuterium depleted water, red light.
Well, the whole planet's irradiated, right? You can't escape EMFs, except for certain situations, but you can't live in a dead zone your whole life. So how do you manage your redox status?
You need electrons. You need electrons. Where you need to be grounded. You need to be super saturated in life energy and electrical activity, and that has a lot to do with magnetism too, because they're not separate. And so yeah, it's just a matter of how do you learn what your cell wants, and then give the cell what it wants. And if you give the cell what it wants, the cell will give you what you want. And what you want is just a good time, and happiness and health. We're learning right now how to give this. We're learning what the cell want. We're learning to speak the cellular language. Like this whole, like you turned me on to. I knew about it before, but I didn't know somebody wrote like the definitive book about it, the human photosynthesis.
Oh yeah.
I knew all about the melanin thing, but I didn't realize that somebody had patents on it and had really cracked it. So I became friends with Dr. Herrera. I correspond with him. He's quite brilliant guy. It's just if what he says is true, it puts biochemistry on its head, flips it, because he's talking about, and he's got some great arguments, and they very difficult to refute, even for somebody with a PhD in biochemistry. Very hard, very difficult. And that's like, where does the nucleus get its energy? There's no mitochondria in the nucleus. Where does it get its energy? Like, answer me that question. Just like the transmutation, sodium potassium pump, leaky channels is the answer of how things get recycled. That's not good. I think there's biological transmutation happening at room temperature, specifically. So there's things that we haven't really, that we're scared. I think collectively we're scared to go there, because it's a new foundation. You gotta blow up the old one and build a new one. And we're just settling into the comfort of what we do know. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I used to try to be a plant and do my ice bath at solar noon, naked, grounded, and I got buzzed from it for sure.
Well, I was doing, in my 20s, I was following the Babaji regimen. Okay, you know what that is? You get into salt water once or twice a day, and you get into fresh water, a river. So you get in the ocean, river, and sit by and expose yourself to a fire. So you get the fresh water, the salt water, and the fire. And that was the old school biohacking, But in effect, what is fire doing? Well, fire is it's giving you far infrared, just like a sauna is giving you far infrared. It's just not coherent so much. It's just not collimated like you would get from an LED, but it's still that latent energy that is giving you energy. It's like, it's like, what can I put in my body that will translate into biomechanical energy? What can I put that will turn from heat into chemistry? So we found that a certain wavelength of light, it doesn't heat the tissue. Instead, it affects the chemistry of it. And so it increases the flow of protons and electrons. Wow. Woohoo. Incredible. I mean, this is like cool shit.
And that's the benefit of like cryotherapy, right? Is because your mitochondria are kicking off infrared, and that's changing your chemistry and your water.
I think the benefit of cryo is inflammation. It reduces inflammation. Mm-hmm. And inflammation is natural. It's a natural process of life because it's just a function of pH. So if you need to increase pH, it increases inflammation. It's about running hot or cold. Mm-hmm. So I think, early on I studied Ayurveda and then Siddha medicine, and these things talk about that, and Chinese medicine as well. But they talk about things like, when you learn about food as medicine, you have to understand if a person has excessive heat, or if they run cold, or like my problem, which is very complex. Like I had very cold extremities, but I was overheated in my core, so that had to be corrected. So you could have different those types of. So you have to take into consideration things like this, and the energetics of the food. Like, is it have a upward action, downward action? Is it heating? Is it cooling? What's the actual function or the character of that food? And does it have multiple characteristics? So that's very important. And somebody gave me some old Chinese doctor lady when I was in my 20s was so impressed with what I knew. She gave me a poster of a Chinese medical food chart, and I studied it for years, and I got to know it really well. Oh. And so I understood the energetics of food, and that can be applied to anything. That can be applied to any kind of treatment. So you're not gonna. I think you're not gonna take somebody that runs cold in their body temperature, and you're gonna get a lot of benefit from constantly submerging that person in a cold plunge. I think you need to do the opposite. I think you need to get them into the cold plunge, but you need to heat them first. You need to overheat them. You need to create hyperthermia. And then when you create the hyperthermia, then you could kind of kick an organism into gear. And then you could put in the cold. Like, I've done this to myself. It's like when you go to a hot spring that has extreme hot and extreme cold, when you start out, it's uncomfortable. You're almost like you're rusty a bit. And as you get into it, it becomes easier and easier. Then by the 10th round, it's like, it's simple. So it's like you have to condition yourself back into that plasticity. Mm-hmm. Ability, and these are very simple. Like, I'm looking at very simple remedies, and they all come from observing nature. We live in a polar environment. We have positive and negative. So how does that affect us? How does that affect what we eat? How does it affect everything? So yeah, that's the key. Is that we understand how to fit in properly, and if we don't understand, and if we just fit into the society that we're born in, that's a recipe for disaster, because you're supposed to shed that that identity, and you're supposed to go and find yourself in nature. And then when you go, okay, now I understand my place in nature, not in this fake reality on Main Street, then you know how to be responsible for your own health. But if you don't have a hope and a prayer growing up. Where I grew up in Chicago, I just got blessed somehow, lucky, because you'll find 10 liquor stores before you'll find an apple.
Right. I can never live in a population dense area again. I know that. I think people like it because of the access to restaurants, and you're 10 minutes from a grocery store and stuff like that. But I would rather live rural than have an hour drive to get to the health food store.
Me too. And now the urbanization with everything else they're throwing at us.
It's nuts. Random question, Victor. Have you ever been stung by a bee?
Multiple times. One time by a wasp, by a bee. I remember one time my employment was, I was employed by Grove Farm, which is a big ranch on Kauai. And I was a bicycle tour guide. I would guide people from the plantation down through the sugarcane tunnel, down through by the reservoir, the jungle, and down to the beach. So it was a 9-mile cool tour that I would take tourists on. And I was on my way, and I used to bike an additional, I think it was 6 or 7 miles to my job. So I would bike to my job and then do bicycle tours all day for tourists. And on the way, like an idiot, as I was biking, I had my mouth open, and a bee flew in and stung me in the back of my throat. And I'm like, what's going through my head is that I've read people can die this way. I've read you know, how are you going to breathe? You're going to have to like stick a pen, get a big pen and stick it in your throat to stay alive. So I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble. So I just pedaled like hell to work it through my system, and it worked. I just
Wow.
pedaled like madness, and it just because I knew that maybe I could metabolize it by just going all out.
How did you get the stinger out though? Because wasn't the stinger stuck in?
Oh man, that was bad. Yeah, I had that. I had to deal with that. That was not easy to get out. That's true.
Wow.
And that was, but it was the venom that I was more worried about. Yeah. Eventually the stinger came out, but yeah. So, that was crazy. So yeah, I was stung by a bee. And one time as a 6-year-old, I was 5 or 6. There's these fake bees. They're flies that look like bees. You know what I'm talking about?
No. Huh.
Yeah. They're flies that look like bees. That's their defense mechanism.
Wow.
I remember this in the Ukraine, and so you could take those flies and put them in your hand. They were very docile. They were and they look like bees. And I grabbed a bee instead of a fly once. I think I was 5 or 6, and it got me. So, but it's wild that it has to, as a defense mechanism, it ensures its own demise. It dies when it stings you. I mean, who are they? They're like aliens, these bees, and there's no other insect. We refuse to eat the spew of any other insect, but somehow this one's okay. Mm-hmm. And it's an insect unlike any other because it has its own, got their own society, their own culture. They're a species unto themselves, and it's phenomenal. And on top of that, if they didn't exist, we wouldn't exist. We would starve to death. We'd have to become breatharian. Really, we'd be in a breatharian crisis. Some of us would do it because we knew how to transmute, but others wouldn't. So because of the melanin, right? The melanin will allow you to be a breatharian if you can pull it off. So the bees give us this gift of milk, and that's why when they said it's good enough for Krishna, it's good enough for me, land of milk and honey. And when you mix the two, and you mix milk and honey, it's delicious. Whether it's whether it's ice cream or whatever you want to call it, you know, even cheese and honey together, it's good. And different honeys have different. The reason people like the honeydew honeys, other than taste and being antimicrobial and they're nice and thick, complex flavor, is because they're actually less sweet. They have less sugar. So, and some honeys they'll be rich in enzyme, because remember, it's coming from the plant.
Right.
If you have, so if you ever get a chance to get some neem honey, it's exquisite. It's like, I wanted to import that. And then I got some, that's right. There's about 100 at the time, mid 2000s, there's probably 150 kilos of this honey. No, yeah, it was like 150 to 200 kilos of this. And that's it per year on the planet, done. And what that honey is Kashmiri saffron honey. Wow. So I had saffron honey, and it's like, I mean, it's all honey, but each one is a different universe of taste and flavor, you know. So
saffron's incredible. I supplement it here and there, and it's a great.
Saffron is a little bit in your milk, in your hot milk at night. It's delicious. So so it's a reflection. It's a concentrated, fractal, coherent reflection of the nature. And if the nature is in its prime, if it's unencumbered by encroachment of our mechanized farming practices and urbanization, if nature is still in its perfect state, still pristine, still biodiverse, then the honey and the pollen from that area, as long as the beekeeper is in tune, you know, in harmony with his bees and his land, then you'll get a product that, you know, it's like, I mean, you're talking about prepping. I mean, I'm prepped for bear when it comes to honey and bee pollen.
What do you think about the sleep aid of a spoonful of honey before bed? I think some of the biohackers were recommending that to, get so you don't run out of glycogen when you're asleep, because sometimes that's the cause of why someone
if you feel it, yeah, if you're intuitively drawn to it, I think it will give you a deeper rest. Because your body, when it's not stressed, if your consciousness is stressed, like, oh, I'm going to bed hungry, right? Unless you're like a soldier that's, sleeps in the trenches, your body subconsciously isn't going to be optimally happy. You don't have, and what I mean by that is that you don't have the stress response. Like unless you're conditioned to have that stress response where any bit of sleep will is because it's a life and death situation. But if you're not conditioned like that, if you're more civilian in your conditioning, then your body wants to have that satiation. It wants to have the feeling that you're protected, that you're taken care of, and it does so yeah, if you go to bed hungry, you might be stressed out about it.
And I've done the opposite. I've had ice cream right before bed and then fasted, and I can say going to bed on an empty stomach, I feel better. I did hear the other day, I was listening to a podcast, I can't remember who it was, and they were saying if you're lying there with insomnia, say it's like 2, 3, 4 a.m., they said the worst thing you could do is stay in bed. They said get up and do something, read, because that's going to be way less stressful on your body.
So I think there is incredible benefit to having eaten 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed, but then you can break the rule as well if you want. And I think that's why I love this Aura ring, because it doesn't lie. You'll know. Like I want higher HRV and I want lower heart rate. And if I have to eat a pound of ice cream and I wake up tomorrow and my heart rate was in the 40s, I'll be like, dude, I just discovered the secret. My HRV is like 60 and my heart rate's 40, 46. I'm like, wow, man, it's ice cream. But the thing is, it's never that thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so because it's never that thing every day, the better approach is to train yourself to be better at managing stress. Yeah, you could be a habitual individual, but if you and you may condition yourself where that ultimately works really well. But if you get into a stressful situation, you just threw everything out the window. Mm-hmm. You just destroy. You don't have the adaptation. Like some people have adaptation to drink alcohol, and others don't. And I think adaptation is really important. That's why I pursued fasting. That's why I pursued different extremes in my life in terms of diet and not eating and exercise and all that, because and not to mention, if you're well traveled, you'll have a better microbiome. So I really invested in my bioterrain. I have incredible bioterrain in my gut. I could eat a bicycle if I want. But slowly, maybe work up to a car if I wanted to do it as a carnival act. But the point is that you condition yourself, and if you don't condition yourself, then when a crisis situation happens, or a situation you're uncomfortable with, you won't have the adaptive response. So it's a combination of adaptive response and your ability to. It's like a bodybuilder that only does one range of motion, and so they can, you can do a great squat, but when it comes to lateral movement, can't barely there. So it's really about if you put yourself in nature, which I've done on multiple times. One of the things that you come back with is there's nowhere in nature is flat. You'll be lucky if you're in a flat field, but nowhere is flat. Nowhere is. So everywhere your mind becomes different. Your mind is reprogrammed because when you go to bed, you don't see the geometry of the earth of where we live in now in our civilized, in your house, your roads, your stores, your all this, right? No, after a while, if you go spend a couple weeks in the forest, everything becomes like holographic, and you start like remembering where plants are and where different shades of green and smells. I mean, you really start plugging in like an animal, because that's where we come from. And when you do that, your senses become alive and your ability to process things. And then you understand why adaptive response is so important. That's why they would always be worried about putting a gringo in the forest, and that gringo would just get killed in the first day, and the natives in the forest, the aboriginals, the Indians, they're in harmony with it. They know how to live. And that's because they made that adaptation. So I think that we have to hack our adaptive response because we live in an artificial environment, artificial to our true nature. But then at the end, we're a mix. If we have an interest in machines and being part machine and roads and planes and going faster and faster, but we must have that somewhere in our alien genetic that we must be derived of that as well. So we're a conglomerate. That's why we have this identity crisis between nature and machine. And so use that identity crisis and define yourself as that, which can overcome it.
Speaking of modern inventions, belts. I recently, actually, yesterday, I got drawstring pants, and I used to wear these like joggers, and I didn't realize my digestion was getting screwed up with my belt. It wasn't super tight. But
really? What about toilets?
Right.
What about sitting on a toilet? Probably the biggest crime committed on humans, without their knowledge. It's like, if you can't squat, you're not worth a squat.
I like it. I have my squatty potty, but I could squat on top too. So.
Do what it takes. This is the corner we've been forced into. Yeah. The belt. Yeah. So the tie. What about the tie, man? No, this is all. I think it's all theater. It's all fun when you recognize it as theater. If you think if you look at it in any other way than it being theater, then there's an issue between you and your soul.
Absolutely. I think royal jelly was the last one we haven't talked about. Have you? I know.
I leave that to the queens, but
okay.
But there's
they're mostly in China, right? Because I've looked into it. They have to have
the thing
dedicated.
About royal jelly is you want it fresh. So right. If you get royal jelly and it's a day old, a week old, whatever it is, it's marginal to benefit.
What about frozen? And then you have to thaw.
Possible. I just don't know. It's possible. Maybe the frozen works. I don't know. That is there's a lot of complex molecules in there, and those are specific. They're specific to the bee. Mm-hmm. And are those things good for us? They're probably as good for us as good mushrooms, because it just has a variety of complex peptides and all kinds of strange and
undiscovered stuff, right?
Undiscovered stuff, yeah. Strange glycoprotein,
kind of like shilajit.
Shilajit is the essence of the forest too. So of course, yeah, it has all the fulvics, the omics, the reishi mushroom, all the mushrooms that live on trees, that eat trees, the parasitic, the ones that are parasitic to trees. They just have these complex, and in all honesty, we cook food to create flavor because we're creating new molecules. We're making like when you ferment things, when you process chocolate, it's getting more complex in terms of the molecular structures that are in there because you're applying, whether it's heat or bacterial ferment, whatever it is, right? So yeah, that we're just we're looking for. It's interesting because on the one hand, we want nothing but the basic building blocks, which is the proton and electron. And on the other hand, certain compounds which would be analogous. They would be analogs to things that are swimming around in our blood or microbiome. So it's very interesting. And then there's the whole water aspect to it. And so the water aspect is really it's about a crystal. It's about a liquid crystal, and just like everything else is about coherence and structure. So
do you do anything to your drinking water? Like I have like MRET and a million thing, there's like the Duet water revitalizer. Just curious if you have if you brew your water.
I got lazy and I only do one thing. If I'm playing around, I'll do a lot of things, but I primarily don't drink much water. I drink tea.
Mm.
So I boil it and I add, well, sometimes I just don't add anything, but I like, if I have raw milk, I'll just have tea and raw milk. Sometimes I'll add inulin. Sometimes I'll add glycine. Sometimes I'll drink water with methylene blue. Sometimes I'll add medicinal mushrooms and do like a coffee substitute or make coffee with it too. But water in and of itself, if I just want to drink water, I love the vortexing it. Just does something to it. The vortexing it improves it, even if it's subjective.
Right. I have to get back to it. I stopped when I went fully off grid. I don't know how much power that thing uses. The main one they sell with the mineral.
No, but I just use a $50 lab
mixer.
I just use a $50 lab mixer with the
magnetic pill
which
thing.
is the pill inside, and it's perfect. It's perfect. So that and really the benefit, I think, if you would be able to quantify an objective benefit from that, is that if your water happens to be low in oxygen, then it's just a way to introduce a little atmospheric gas into the water, and so that helps, and create some kinetic energy, from that spinning. Get things excited, like a slap on the face. Wake up! Just nobody likes anything sleepy. You want to be alert. They just wake up your water. So, cause that's what the rain does. That's what rain is. That's what a river is. Nature abhors a vacuum, right? It's still water. How terrible.
Did you ever mess with the infopathy? I interviewed the guy. Basically, it's like a little disc that you connect to their app, and it's a subscription-based thing, where you can beam it with different frequencies, whether it's 528 or. And I
think all that stuff has some.
It tasted different, and I had my whole family try it. It did something.
I think there's something there, and clearly there's something there, but there's also something to your own consciousness. Prayer, just like intention. Just intention. I mean, also you can ask a friend before and after, and they may tell you that wow, this is a little different here because of the intention. Remember, we're so much. Think of the power that you would need if you wanted to recreate the human brain as a supercomputer. The amount of power that you would need to drive it, and it's like the hydroelectric energy from Niagara Falls for one brain. And we do it with like a few calories. So, it's incredible what we can do. We could, if the resolution on your nerves, your ability to, you can, if you were like huge, like bigger than the earth, and you had the earth, and then you had a car on the planet. With your finger, you can a tactile sense. You can tell the you can tell the difference. You can find that car. You'll know. That's how that's how attuned and acute our evolutionary biology. That's the gift it's given us. Is that our ability, our sense, our tactile sense is incredible. Our visual sense, our smell. Maybe some animals are better, but just all in all, I mean, you could take psychedelics and go to places and see colors you've never seen before too. So there's even more to the reality that you think you're in.
I was reading on the plane the other day in my book that the amount of energy storage we have in the human body is equivalent to one AA battery. But I thought it was more than that. I mean, you think of the Matrix where they're plugged
Here's the interesting thing is, no, we need to replicate the processing power, you would need like megawatts of power, multiple.
Right.
But the human, but we're energy whores, truly. Humans have made, at some point in human evolution, we became pure prostitutes for power. And how we did that is because we require, if you take all the humans on this planet and you look at all the power that we use, all the power that we use for our refrigeration, for the lights in the studio, for
electric cars,
for the BTU that we burn in gas, the planes, the trains, the automobiles, everything that you love that makes up the world as we know it and how much power it consumes, that is 60,000 watts of continuous power that we require because we're energy whores. And it's not sustainable because how much can you produce on a treadmill or on a bicycle?
How much?
50 to 100,
right?
Watts.
Right.
And we're using 60,000 continuously, and we can only produce 50 continuously, maybe 25.
Right.
I mean, think about that. Are you proud of yourself?
Well, you were saying to create deuterium depleted water, how much solar would you need per acre? It was
obscene. For the technology that exists today, it's obscene. It is absolutely obscene. You would need, in order for a couple thousand people to drink DDW daily and continue this lifestyle, you would need 20 acres of solar.
Wow. And I know how I put up one array since I bought this house, and I know how expensive it was. People think living off grid is like luxury ball. It's expensive. I mean, I spent over $100,000 on my setup between the inverters, the charge controllers, the batteries.
Early in our history as humans, we were predominantly preoccupied with survival. Yeah. And so now you're doing it in a technological way, and you're still finding that it's challenging. And because you want all the bread and circus, you want all the conveniences that you're used to as a human that demands. You don't ask, you don't beg, you don't wait in the corner and hope that it comes to you. You demand 60,000 watts of continuous power. And we have nothing to show for it. We have nothing, because all we could do is pedal, like you would have to pedal on your bicycle all day to keep your food cold. So we were more prepared in days gone by. We had root cellars, we dried up, we had brine to dry our food. We prepared, we canned
especially in cold climates. Up here where I'm at, I can't really do wind, can't do hydro because it freezes, part of the year. But like even solar, only half the year. It's like,
right. Well, you could do amorphous solar and you could have it year round.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about that. Where it absorbs on cloudy days.
Yeah, exactly. You can do that. And those solar panels, they're not popular because they're not promoted, but they're exactly what you need in that environment. Not the type of photovoltaic that is made for a desert.
Or micronuclear, like we were talking about before we started recording.
Well, you think about it, like we're just it hasn't been that long ago that we had no running water. I mean, now we take it for granted, but we have running water. I mean, is that insane? Like for 99% of the time that humans have been on the planet, we did not have running water. We had to go and fetch it from the spring, from the river, and now we have it. We just turn a faucet and we get it. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have all these conveniences we take for granted, and yeah, no, it's really crazy, and it's really shitty that much energy is required to make deuterium depleted water. Or if we can, like, we're smart enough that we've already answered that problem. Hey, we're energy whores. We can produce very little, but we want it all, 60,000 watts continuously. So we already came up with the answer. We came up with nuclear. But even then, it's still not perfect because it's energy that is it's extrinsic. It's not intrinsic.
Mm-hmm.
It's we have to burn something. We have to heat something. It's not implosive. It's explosive. Okay, whether it's carbohydrate or hydrocarbon. Mm-hmm. And if you look at nuclear, we think we solved the problem, and in many respects, yes, that's a solution for the energy problem, is to use something with a lot of neutrons. But what is it doing? It's just boiling water. That's all we've gotten to, is be able to boil water better. It's like, oh, hey, we can boil water, woo! But so we're like evolutionary. We're so far away from it, and we've so lost the plot.
I wonder if there's a fractal connection to our current dependence on solar, wind, hydro, propane, gasoline, diesel, and our bodies, and how human health is as a whole on the planet. Do you think there's a connection there with the inefficiency?
Yeah, it's put us in a subconscious crisis collectively, where it's just below the level of consciousness. It's high enough in our field of awareness, even though it's not conscious, for it to not feel good. Like something doesn't feel right, but it's not quite in the consciousness where we're preoccupied with it. But it's just it's like walking around with like you have this itch that you keep scratching and you can't get rid of it, because we haven't solved the problem. We're all guilty of this, but we take the benefit. We have no problem with receiving the benefit. Zero. Like, we'll take the benefit all day long. But to solve the problem, we have to get creative, and some of us are getting more creative. But as a culture, we're like, we get it right, and it's like one. You know what it is? It's like one step forward, two steps back. It's frustrating. Like, you'd hope you'd hope for more from people, or from collective.
I like the picture we took together. I don't know what it was now, 2 years ago. You're wearing the shirt that said anti-gravity is a human right.
Anti-gravity is a human right, because the room temperature superconductor is the holy grail, and that is our human right. So as soon as we have inverse gravity or anti-gravity, that means we've solved the power problem, the energy problem. Now we don't feel so guilty anymore. Mm-hmm. Hey, we've got free energy. What does it care if I have a fridge, what does it matter if I'm prepping with 30 fridges in my backyard? I got free energy. Do whatever you want to do. It's ultimate freedom. It's the ultimate freedom, because what are we looking for beyond anything else as human beings? Safety. Mm-hmm. And safety comes from love. It comes from being safe from physical harm, mm-hmm. and it comes from food, because mm-hmm. when you're starving, it doesn't feel very safe. You feel like you're going to die, and you don't want to starve. And this is the mitochondria just saying, I'll help you out, but you got to help me too, and that's food. So yeah, we have and now if you have energy, if you have free energy, then and you can travel and you have energy, then you feel
travel's
safe.
Huge. The travel part,
you just feel safe.
Yeah, the History Channel always shows specials of World War II, and when the National Socialists were creating these flying saucers. We call them UFOs or whatever, but they existed back then, and it was just suppressed. I mean, this has been around since the 40s.
Well, we're migratory by our nature. Our nature is migratory. We're going against our inherent nature if we sit in one place our entire lives. Mm. We're migratory creatures. We're like the antelope. We're wanderers. We like to travel. And
I'm just sick of flying. I recently flew down to see my brother turned 40, and it just takes so much out of me to do the TSA thing, get the pat down, and just the whole.
I got global entry, so that makes it a lot easier. Okay. and you should if you value the experience at the airport and how good or not good it can be. So yeah, no, it's just the travel part that's an art to it, but yeah, no, in the past, look, you could have, if it was 100 years ago, it was like 1920, 1910, you could have showed up in the United States without a passport. There's no passports. You just show up. Now we're herded on the plantation. I get it. Everybody wants to give you a number and know where you are. But at one time, it was a free for all. You just go. And now you can do that too, as long as you have all the right paperwork.
Right. I just feel like driving now across states instead of fly. That's what I'm
absolutely. That's still free. You still have that freedom.
You can bring what you want. You don't have to get bag checked.
And if you look at the promise of the atomic age, it's come to be known after we discovered that hydrogen had multiple isotopes. We entered the atomic age, and the promise of the atomic age was that everybody would have a plane, right? We'd all be traveling through the air on dirigibles or our own planes or whatever it was. We were, so really the self-sufficiency was supposed to, but now we don't. We're just we're herded. And some of us don't like being herded, but others we're willing to do it for the benefit of going somewhere else, or you just make enough money to fly private. Your problem is solved.
Well, have you heard of EVTOL, electrical vertical takeoff and landing?
Oh, I talked to all those guys, and I've seen it, and it's very exciting. I started
following it. It's like the next 2 years, there's like 6-7 companies that are going to make these.
Absolutely.
It's crazy.
And I would always, envy. I don't like the word envy. It's a terrible word, but I would always envy my friend who had a MiG. Okay, at Van Nuys Airport. Okay, so he had his own jet, and he used it for filming mostly because it's got to work for you to make money for that fuel bill. But he had his own MiG, so he could just get in his jet and fly anywhere he wanted. So look, everything's available to us. We just create our own reality. And when we have more, and from biochemical perspective, from biophysics, when we have more energy, we're better at molding and shaping and creating our own experience. If we have, and some of us have supernatural energy that allows us to do things that are beyond the reach of most people. I'll give you an example. Somebody, now I only know this as an anecdote, as a story, but I believe it. Somebody kicked Bruce Lee in the back and broke his back, and they said he'd never walk again. And he willed his spine to repair itself. So,
wow.
Sometimes there are exceptional people that can do supernatural things, and most of us can do something to that based on demand. Like you can't lift a car on demand, but if you've got a little baby, it's your baby, stuck under the car, you could be a 90-pound mother and you will lift that car sky high to save your child. And the reason you can do that is because your glycogen stores. So you have the ability for rapid, on-demand power and energy. You just don't realize what you have, and your bones will give, your tendons will snap before the amount of energy can be used that you have available to you in a pinch. It's not conscious. It's not conscious, and it's not conscious because it's like if you take something that is not, like a bug, everything is conscious of its mortality. So even a unicellular organism is conscious of its mortality. It does not want to die. It will run away from the shoe. Okay. So we have that in us from millions of years of evolution as mammals, and before that even as eukaryotes. It would be incorrect to say that humans are the only things that are conscious of their mortality. We've been conscious of our mortality since we were a single-celled organism. So that kind of primitive, and we're talking as primitive as it gets, that type of primitive response that we have, that instinct, it's inherent. You don't have to do anything, and that's why sometimes it hurts us more to mess with things that, already work for us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I've mentioned on the show a few times Iztok Bentov from Atom to Cosmos, and he wrote the book Stalking the Wild Pendulum, and there's one lecture of him on YouTube, one footage, and he said we basically squashed all the miracles. But yeah, if a young girl sees her dead grandmother in a room, she gets put on anti-psych meds. I grew up seeing stuff, and I don't talk about it much because people would think I have a mental illness or whatever. Right. And who knows if it was some deficiencies, kind of allowing us to see into other planes. But all that stuff stopped, and I don't know why. But as I got older, I've had less and less experiences that were weird.
Those are psychic abilities, and certainly they're hampered by 60 hertz electrical wires everywhere. If our electrical grid was a multiple of 8 hertz, that would be different, right? So if you had a multiple of 8, what is that? 64. So if you had a multiple of 8 for the electricity, the alternating current, if the phase was that, then it would be in harmony. It would be, and it's not. That's why so instead, this 60 hertz or 50 hertz in Europe, what it does is it really violates us on because we didn't ask for it. It really violates us on a endocrine level, at a hormone level. It messes with our entire glandular system. And the reason I know this personally, experientially, is because I've sailed in my life. I've been 100 miles away from land plus. And after a few days at sea, your glands, they come up like a hedgehog, they come up from its hole going, is it safe? Is this okay? Like a groundhog, not a hedgehog. Is it, am I going to see light, or is it going to be darkness and winter? So, your endocrine system primarily, I noticed, your glands start expanding, start awakening, start opening up. So we're under stress. We're under stress from the grid. The grid has got a constant hold on us. So I think if we were to not have any of the, and I think I'm not judging that stress. I'm not saying it's good or bad, because we talked about this adaptive response. Like if you can't, I used to live next to a electrical transfer station, and it didn't bother me. And I had friends come over, and they couldn't stay at my house for more than half an hour. They would start feeling it. They'd be like, Vic, how you living this shit? I go, honestly, I've just learned how to use it to my benefit. So,
I had friends that live across the street from that. I put in dirty Stetzer filters. It made a world of difference. Their reading was 2,000. I brought it down to 300. That made a huge difference. I could sleep there again.
I mean, yes, it affects you on a subconscious, and if it's bad enough, you start feeling it consciously. But I think I think inherently we're really powerful as a biofield of energy that we can really deal. We should give ourselves a lot more credit,
But we need DDW probably to.
You have to have whatever it is that gives you that is a clean source of fuel. You can't be swimming upstream. Like you can't be enjoying the telephone call with your significant other when you're dodging bullets. Hey, honey, how's it going? Whoa, watch out. Everything's fine. You're dodging bullets, or you're swimming upstream without a paddle. So you really have to be focused on your survival. And this has been humanity's history, a constant predisposition and focused on bare bones survival. Will I live tomorrow? Will my children live? What do I need to do to survive? And now we've got a little bit of breathing room. We've gotten to that point in our civilization where we can focus on other things, because survival is not as difficult now. So we do stupid things like focus on killing each other in war and excess and see how far we can push things. But now you're looking at simple people, not too focused on diet or lifestyle, that are living into the 110 plus year of age. Why? Because it's just they don't have to stress about their survival.
Drinking wine, smoking cigars.
Yeah, and they're not worried about their man. There's no bigger stress than survival of your kids. It's just whether it's financial survival or physical survival. Or
I'm starting to think too, like predicting the apocalypse, because I just saw that movie, The Road, where there's cannibalism and Vigo.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I saw that.
And like we're constantly getting programmed, right, with these like apocalyptic visions, and I think it's by design, right?
Everybody's forced to be an eschatologist. When's it come? Eschatology is the study of end times, right?
Yeah.
We're obsessed with the study of the end. And that's because we don't want to go to work Monday morning. Like, I would rather the meteor hit and all of us die than for me to show up on work Monday.
Yeah. That's
why. We're not content with our lives, so we want it to all end, you know. I mean, collectively, like if you're a jaded urbanite, you know.
Right.
But other than that, you're just, you know, you don't quite, most people haven't had the time to be philosophers or question things because they got to get up in the morning, and like you know, you're trying to run a homestead, so you got to tend to the gotes, you got to do this, that.
I actually gave them to my good friend, and they're in a good home now.
You got rid of them.
More goats. I'm just realizing it's like, I don't know. At some point, I might do the farming thing, but
you got to choose the goat. You got to choose the goats or the podcast,
right? I really think you need like children and a family, and it's just
that's why you need a farm. That's why families stuck together. You know, everybody had chores. You know, you would get beaten by your, against your face, neck, head, and chest if you didn't do your chores. You know, nobody wanted to. Nobody can carry your weight. Everybody had a function, and now you have the excuse. You just, you know, it's terrible. We live. The problem is all the people that live in a sympathetic state, and they're not using that energy, because sympathetic means it's fight or flight, and if you're not fighting and if you're not running, you're just simmering in your juices while you're inside your fish tank, your automobile. You're really creating an inflammatory acidic condition. You're creating a propensity for hypocapnia. You're creating a propensity for improper breathing. You're stressing yourself out without even moving, and humans have a great ability to invent their reality without even moving from their chair.
Right.
And we don't have to move, and we can invent, because it's all coming toward us, and it's either good or bad, and we pick it, we choose it. And stress compounds stress. And you need you need 5 thoughts. This has been proven. This is clinical psychology. I'm not an expert or anywhere close in any of this, neurobehavioral physiology, all this stuff. I have friends that are obsessed with this, but you need 5 positive thoughts to make up for 1 negative thought, or actually you have let's call it, if it's on a point system, a good thought, positive thought is 1, and a negative thought is 5. -5. So you got +1 or -5. So you can see how you can get yourself in debt real fast. And then the mob's coming. They're going to chop off your finger or worse.
And that's also communicating with others. I've heard that in the context of a relationship with, your woman. It's like
totally.
the same thing. If you say something negative, you need
my God,
more compliments. Right?
Yeah. Anybody that has a mother will tell you. Absolutely. Or a girlfriend or a wife. Right. But or in any relationship, doesn't matter what the gender or sex is, or even the species. Quite honestly, it does not matter. But that's the truth.
I love it. Well, if you saw me looking down, Victor, I had listeners send in questions, and then I forgot to tell you at the beginning. I usually do a Q&A with shows, and I'm picking out the good
We're not.
ones.
Are we live? We're not live though. No, this is not live.
This is.
Oh, this is live.
I mean, oh no, it's not live. Sorry, this is pre-recorded. Yeah.
It's live when you're hearing it, but it's pre-recorded for us.
Right.
Or it's live when we're recording it, but pre-recorded for you. It's whatever. Choose your own adventure.
Right. Yeah, I picked out some things that we haven't talked about that I thought were interesting questions. If you're open to going through them real quick here.
Yeah, let's go there.
One that we didn't talk about: does heat kill the properties of honey? Like, if you add it to your hot tea, is that a bad thing?
Yes. They talk about 118 degrees is that sacred number we learned about as
rough,
as obedient young rough neophytes, right? When we were biogenic neophytes, we learned that 118 was where the enzymes start to die. With honey, it's less actually. The honey, it's below 90.
Wow.
So you really don't want to heat your honey anywhere near 90. You want to keep it in 70, 75, even 85 is fine. But then it starts losing it starts breaking down easier. It's the enzymes in there. Certainly if you kill all the enzymes in the honey, then you're left with sugar. You're left with glucose. Mm-hmm. And not only glucose, it's a lot of different sugars in there, but that's the problem. If you want the enzymatic activity, the benefit of the raw honey, then you really don't want to get it anywhere past 90. And this is a problem for beekeepers because they want liquid honey. They want it to flow. There's no fun in ladling honey with a giant spoon, a giant ladle, right? Because that's what you're doing to pack honey. And in fact, if you do want to maintain the integrity of honey, you will not heat it to the point where some honeys you can heat it to liquid, but what happens is the honey crystallizes rather fast. So you have to do it quick. Like you can heat it to 80 and it'll get liquid, but if you let it crystallize, that'll never happen again. So you have to do it right in the beginning, right away. And then, otherwise you're going to be ladling it into your jar, and that takes extra labor and so forth. So a lot of these things that cheapen the experience are done so because of convenience for the sake of mass merchandising.
Yeah. And someone asked, how do you tell if your honey is actually raw? It's if it crystallizes.
Or you can just throw it, get really angry and take a teaspoon of it and throw it at the wall. And then you see, it's like pasta. You see if it'll run down or not. So it's like, you don't want watery honey.
Right.
You want honey that's not watery, and you want that consistency in it too, because you might have honey that you think isn't watery, but it really is. Yeah. So you stay away from you try to go for the tree honeys. You try to go for the honeys that are from herbs. You stay away from the monocrop honeys. You stay away from clover honey. You stay away from stuff like that. You stay away from honeys that are mixed and blended, because then they're usually heated to homogenize them. So yeah, don't try to, but if you put here's what I learned in my culture, in Russian culture. When I go there, I notice that nobody puts tea in their honey. What they do is they have tea, and then they have a teaspoon of honey, and they drink the tea, and then they eat the honey. They don't, and that's how it's been done for 1,000 years. So obviously somebody realized why destroy your palate? If the tea has a yummy flavor and the honey has a yummy flavor, why combine them? They may not work. They may not be synergistic. They may work better separately. It's like there are people that can enjoy white rice without adding salt or shoyu or soy sauce or wasabi or whatever else. And there's truly, I can truly enjoy white rice just for the taste and texture of it.
We went to Benihana's for my brother's birthday. My blood sugar was a roller coaster.
But if you keep adding shit, if you keep adding condiments, things, I went to a living food support group potluck, and 1994, 93 or 94. And there was this old guy there, he was like he was a hippie he was not even a hippie. He was like, he was a beatnik. This guy was from the 50s. Okay. And this was a living foods, raw food. It was back then it was a living food support group. So we drank Rejuvelac and wheatgrass and sat around and swapped stories. Well, I was 22 years old, and this guy must have been 80 something. And he looked at me and he said, "The secret is mono diet." It works for everybody. It works for everything else. Like, you don't see.
Meaning eating one food at
a time.
Once at a time. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I feel best doing. I think that's one of the best things I got out of the raw vegan thing was simplicity. Because I do notice, even with supplements, when I take a blend of 50 things, even if it's herbs, I don't feel as good.
You better be an alchemist to figure out a way that's better than mono diet, because the animals haven't yet. They just eat one thing and they're happy with it. They don't like the lion doesn't go, "Oh my God, I forgot my salt shaker. This isn't going to taste this good. And I forgot I was going to have some kimchi on the side." But no, it's just mono diet is safe, and really it doesn't trip up your body into it's very difficult. You think your body doesn't know that you're eating foods that come from halfway around the world. It knows. And that's why we're told to eat seasonally and proper food combining and all that stuff that we learn. And if we don't, then we go farting our way through life. But
that was a question we got. How important is it to source bee products locally? Because you always hear to cure your allergies or treat your allergies, you want to get local honey only.
You do. And that's why I settled on this Mediterranean honey, because Mediterranean is such a great environment it's like a perfect diet, right? So if your honey comes from Mediterranean plants, chances are it'll be compatible with just about everybody. But yeah, local is much better, but a lot of times local is contaminated, local is not available, local is.
We had a question about glyphosate-free honey. It's like, that's airborne, right? Glyphosate.
Well, this would be glyphosate. This would be as glyphosate-free as possible, because there's no farms anywhere for hundreds of miles. So you want to stay away from, because glyphosate will travel. And even though, like, there's nobody that lives in North America that does not have at least 1 to 3 parts per billion glyphosate in their body. There's nobody. Wow. Everybody has 3 parts per billion. You can't get away from it. And so,
how do you detox it, in your opinion?
I think fulvic acid is a great way to do it. I think, maybe the shilajit, the fulvic compounds in the shilajit, assist to make that happen. You got me on humus soak. I've been bathing in that. I love that stuff. Cool. Well, I think it's just the problem with the glyphosate is it's a big molecule. So you need something to drag it out. Fulvic can. And so anything really that will perform that function of clathrate, that obscene. It's an obscene molecule, that glyphosate. And I think not being sulfur deficient will also help. Having good methylation pathway. If you can't methylate properly, then you're double screwed in this life.
It's a mineral chelator, right? I wonder if that's why shilajit gives people that nootropic buzz, because they're always getting their minerals chelated.
I think that it's a constant. We're very hungry for minerals, and some of them we use more than others. Like magnesium, we're magnesium burning hogs. We burn magnesium. We just we're furnaces for it. And I think for all minerals, but some we only need in very trace amounts because they serve a catalytic function.
Vanadium or indium. There's some
indium. Yeah. When you're looking at things that get more complex, that get bigger, nature likes the path of least resistance. That's why everything runs on hydrogen, and that's why hydrogen, known as protium, hydrogen 1 is what allows life to happen in this universe. but its brother, its fatter cousin or brother is the anti-life element.
Right.
Only because it has an extra neutron. Just, oh, sorry, you're too fat. You don't get to ride.
And you're talking about deuterium.
Yeah, we're talking about deuterium.
Okay.
But it's small. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, what is deuterium? It's super small compared to what, helium, even compared to iron. I mean, look at how small deuterium, but it's double the mass of what the body wants. So we deal in nano. We deal in femtoseconds and not even micrograms, not even nanograms. We deal in angstroms and femtoseconds. That's when things happen here. And then and our consciousness is like so slow. It's like we're like a 74 Oldsmobile. We're just super slow.
That's why we need cats.
We need it's why we're obsessed with going faster. Do you ever think about that? Why are humans obsessed? We're obsessed with faster car, faster rocket ship. We just want to go fast, as fast as we can. We want to go as fast. We want to break the speed barrier. We want to break the speed. We want to go faster than light. We're obsessed with making TV shows about going faster than light and movies about faster than light and books about faster than light. Why are we so obsessed with this?
Interesting.
And we're obsessed with it is because that's the speed at which life happens. And we're craving it because that's how fast. You need a billion ATP for one heartbeat. In the time I said this sentence, I produced the equivalent in red blood cells as the population of Canada. It's like everything is happening much faster than you and I can even if we can comprehend. We could never comprehend how fast DNA replicates. You couldn't consciously ever understand. You'd have to take. There's no amount of ayahuasca mushrooms or LSD you could take to comprehend. Maybe people are trying. There's trying. I commend people for trying.
Even when we're like sitting in a plane, like all the speed at which inflammatory reactions are happening. Like recently, I did my combo is ascorbic acid and molecular hydrogen. They give you the boxed water. That's my favorite because I just drop a tablet in there, shut the lid, and then I just shoot it, and that makes me feel really good.
It's it's instant. It's instant, and that's what we take for granted, and we shouldn't take for granted. The reason I say we take for granted is because I really want everyone to not take for granted, like the cornucopia of not only experience but the palette that we have to paint our lives with, the abilities that we have, and I think humans have a tendency for depression. I think most of us are walking around just slightly or just functionally depressed. Functionally, right? It's just, and a lot of times it's almost necessary to blend in, to blend into with everyone else, that you surrender a little piece of yourself just so you could fit in society, because at heart we're wild, we're feral,
Right.
We're alpha to the core, because it has to do with millions of years we're the product of millions of years of something trying to survive. We're trying to make, and now we're at a whole other, we've reached this like incredible place, just absolutely incredible, where we are in our collective evolution, and how we're screwing it up royally. But I think, forget about all that. On an individual level, we can succeed. We can knock it out the park. On a personal, individual level, we have the ability to really take on that birthright. That birthright of and some people just, everything is random, right? It's a zero-sum game, because like one person might do everything that's necessary to survive, and then the other guy lives to 110 smoking cigars. So it's, in that respect, it's random. Genetics has more to do with it than epigenetics, but at the end of the day, it is all random. But if you could force that random just through just through, it's all just a state of mind. Like I asked one of the top yoga masters in the world, why do we do yoga? And his answer was just to move the blood around. So the answer is always easier and simpler than you think. And it's just, yeah, we're just trying to perpetuate our species. You know, the next, we're temporary surviving vehicles, not only for genetics, but we're temporary surviving vehicles for ideas. And these ideas, ultimately, they are there to improve our lives, right? To increase our experience of we have the ability to distinguish between good and bad, so, or what we like and what we don't like, but we're inundated, and I got so lucky, Matt, because I went to a school that taught you how to think for yourself, and that taught you how to ask the right question, and that taught you how to be analytical and use critical thinking and have logic. And this was just what was instilled in me. And I just look around me and I see how it's lacking so much from people that should otherwise be quite intelligent and predisposed to an easy life. You know, like John Wayne said. You know, John Wayne said, "Life is hard. Life is harder when you're stupid."
I can't think of a better spot to end it. This was awesome. I loved it, and it's the best ending for a podcast.
Don't you wish you said that? Like,
right.
Don't you wish that? That's like the ultimate. That's like the ultimate quotable fact.
Right. I love it. So bvitamin.com and
bvitamin.com, drinklightwater.com. I'm trying to help people help their mitochondria. So bee pollen, great for the copper. Light water, obviously, we didn't even get into hyperbaric or red light, but these are all.
We'll have to do another show and just talk about general like biohacking and human optimization.
I think there's a lot of, my theme has always been biohacking on a budget, because I didn't have all that money to give myself an exotic lifestyle, to give myself what I wanted. Now, fortunately, I was living in Hawaii at the time, and I had a lot of biodiversity, so I learned how to do all this stuff on a budget. And I think that's really valuable. That can be very valuable for people, even though deuterium depleted water is the antithesis of doing anything on a budget because it's so expensive. But there are tricks and there are ways, and I know them because I was angry. I was angry at the medical establishment for failing me. No.
Well, I feel like it's an underappreciated thing. Like I still, see people, they ask me, Matt, what do you recommend for cancer? And I'm not making this medical advice, but if I had cancer, I would look at like systemic enzymes. I would look at DDW. These are like really proven therapies.
Bioterrain and energy. Like your body it's not saying that, oh, you got cancer now, it's a one-way road, you're gonna die. Okay. No, I think that it's a matter of energy. It's all just an energy game. Cancer is a lack of energy. It's lack of a bioelectrical charge. And cell doesn't replicate properly because of that. It's under stress. It doesn't have enough energy to deal with it. Like we shut down. Like we will. Like when we are. Like we've all been. I don't know if you have, but I have. We've all been taken past our breaking point. And when you get taken past your breaking point, you panic and you shut down. And that happens on the macro. That happens on the micro. So. But the good news is that we have an adaptability, and humans are the most adaptable. Like we really are we really are a champion of survival in any type of environment or we somehow, we can exist just about anywhere. So that just shows us that we, unfortunately, it's good and bad. We can afford to make mistakes, which is good. And that's also bad. We can afford to make some mistakes, and that's bad because we're even making those mistakes. And give yourself less, just prevent the risk. I think why even tempt fate? That's why it's like if molecular biology tells you that your optimal deuterium level in your body is 120 something, then, and you can afford to do it. Why question it? If molecular biology tells you that you don't have enough copper and you're overloaded with iron, and you can take a product that'll increase it naturally, do it. It's like I don't want to. I'm afraid of the alternative. I'm afraid of I don't like the pain. It's not pleasant. I don't want to be disfigured. I don't want to be operated on. I don't want to feel desperate. I don't want to feel like I don't want to feel like I have to trust somebody that I don't know with the answers that determine my fate. So yeah, we could do another podcast, and I'm more than happy to share whatever I know with anybody who's listening, because I can't take it with me anyway.
I love it. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll put the links below, and stick around as we close out the show.
And keep that John Wayne quote close.
I will. All right, Victor. Stick around as I close it out. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
That wraps up today's show. It's always so much fun chatting with Victor. We've spoken for hours off the air, and I could tell that he's actually passionate about human health and continually learning and not getting stuck in dogmas. And speaking of dogmas, it was actually funny that we went down the copper path. I was not expecting that. And I'm glad that I could introduce that concept to him of iron overload and copper deficiency. And obviously there's more to the story. A lot of people are actually iron deficient. And then a lot of the little facts that are shared as memes. For example, that we only need 1 milligram of iron per day by mouth. That would actually kill somebody. That's super dangerous because that's not absorbed iron, and they don't make the distinction there. So the actual requirements for absorbed iron is way higher than 1 milligram per day, especially for women, especially for pregnant women. So a lot of this information can be actually harmful and dangerous, which is why one of the reasons I like having this show, to break all this down and continually bring more nuance and complexity to these topics, instead of just, having this blanket statement that supposedly applies to every human on planet Earth. If you're a fan of bee pollen, I highly recommend heading over to beevitamin.com and purchasing some of Victor's bee pollen, as well as his honey. I still haven't tried the autumn heather variety of honey, but I have his oak tree and the red fir and his salves. All of his products have been incredible. So highly recommend giving them a shot and mixing the pollen with water. That's his preferred way to consume it, instead of just putting it directly in the mouth. Bee products are such a powerhouse of nutrition. And I think if you're taking minimal supplements, then it's smart to go heavy on the bee products to ensure that you're getting nutrients that definitely aren't present in the fruits and vegetables. And if you haven't tried deuterium depleted water, on my website, if you go through my link to light water, you get a discount off of your first order. And that stuff has just changed my life. I give it to my cats exclusively, as I told Victor. I drink as much of it as I can. And of course, there's the affordability factor. Hopefully, when they get the US facility finally locked down, the price will go down. But because it's shipped from Russia and shipping water is very expensive, that is a big part of why it's so costly. When I first started drinking DDW a few years ago, I had profound experiences, and it was only after a few weeks of drinking it. And I could definitely say that there's a building effect the longer you drink it. And hanging out with Victor in person, it was very clear that he has tremendous energy and stamina. I was actually envious because if I stay up late, I just start falling asleep. And he was just like the Energizer bunny. He just kept going and going. And I think the deuterium depleted water that he's been on for years plays a big role there. My website is matt-blackburn.com. You could read about my CLF protocol. You could look at my recommended products under the shop tab. I have an exciting new interview coming out in the next few weeks with Analemma water. They just released a whole house unit that I haven't installed yet, but that little wand for about $170 or so, depending if you use a discount code, is really incredible. There's so many different water structuring units now and vortexers, and you could run frequencies into the water. And I always tell people it all helps, but to me, their little wand has been the most profound, and it is the most natural. It's not using any electricity. It's just this mother water that they've created over a couple of years using lightning strikes and moon cycles and various things. It's kind of a secret sauce. And when that water goes through the glass tube, which is quartz, and interacts with the water molecules in, say, your water bottle or a glass of water, and you swirl it around, kind of vortexing your drinking water with it, it actually makes other water coherent. And you could taste the difference. You could do experiments, blind experiments, which are kind of fun with family and friends. And the water definitely has a different mouthfeel. A lot of people are skeptical because you can't measure it, but they have done numerous different studies, and they have that under their science tab on their website. They've done a glycan age study, an ATP study, a microbiome study. They looked at brain waves, and then perhaps the most exciting, soil fertility and the soil microbiome. So they found that plants have more biophotons when they're grown using Analemma water. And while we're on this topic, finally, the Mitolife 7-stage water solution, aka water filter, is finally released. This has been by far the most frequently asked question that I've received over the past several years. What water filter do you recommend? When is your water filter coming out? And now the main question is, what makes your water filter different? And the main difference is that it's open source. So instead of having to come back to us to buy replacement filters, you can actually buy them anywhere. And you can even mix and match. Say if you're on a well and maybe you want more iron filtration, you could get different filters for that or double up on those. Or if you're on municipal, then our current configuration with the filters that we sell is probably ideal for municipal water. And they're also twist-off cartridges. So if you're familiar with other reverse osmosis systems, you have to disconnect the cartridges, and it gets really messy. I've flooded my kitchen floor several times. It's a real hassle to switch the filters out on most other filters. But with ours, you just turn off the tank, you turn off the inlet, water coming into the filter. You put a little towel down at the bottom of the unit on the floor of it, and then you just twist off the filters. And it's a couple minute change versus, I mean, I've spent 10, 15, 20 minutes changing filters on other brands. And that's really the key, because your water filter is only as good as the filters. And I think that's where people feel overwhelmed with owning their own water filtration unit. It just seems daunting and too much work. You know, it's easier to just go to a water store, go to one of those water machines at the health food store, or most people just buy bottled water. But most bottled water comes in plastic. And we know that plastic leaches, especially when light hits it. And you weren't following those plastic bottles as it was traveling to your health food store. You don't know if the delivery driver left the back of the truck open for minutes, several hours, while full spectrum sunlight was beating through and hitting that plastic, and that was going into your water. And now you drink that bottled water and you get full of phthalates, which are endocrine disruptors. Then if you buy bottled water in glass, let's say Mountain Valley or Gerolsteiner, Perrier, whatever it is, that's a hassle to lug all that water every week from the store to your house and throw it in the trash. You have more trash to throw away. This is just a lot more sustainable to have your own system, have your drinking bottle of choice, your vessel. I like the UV cleaning, self-cleaning style. Currently using a bottle called Lark, LARQ, which uses UV light to sterilize it. I've used several water vessels over the years, and I just find they get gross, even if I ozonate them with the Crucial 4 ozone machine. I've done that with the Purist bottles. And unless you're running them through the dishwasher consistently, which is an option, I am just a little lazy. And so I really like this Lark bottle because it just is a USB charge and it'll just run on its own ultraviolet light and sterilize the water intermittently. And all of these little details I go into on the Mitolife Academy on YouTube. It's a big reason why I have that, just to break up all these little nuances and share all the little things that people like, because the little details actually matter, especially with water. And I'm in agreement with the Analemma water people that water is what informs life. So it is basically what's holding life together. It's conscious, and you're only as healthy as the water that you drink. So as of now, there's only a handful of units still available. This is our first small run that we did, and more will be rolling in. If you've never had an RO unit, then I recommend getting the install kit, which includes the storage tank, the faucet, the tubing, the plumber's tape, and basically everything you need to hook it up under your sink. And of course, we recommend using a licensed plumber. I have installed units like this myself, and it's basically just drilling into the drain line, running the wastewater from the unit into the drain line, and then there's actually no drilling required often to hook the inlet, so water traveling into the machine. Some people have asked if it's renter friendly. So if you're renting an apartment or if you're renting a house, my answer is yes. Of course, check with the landlord, but I've done it several times at various rentals that I've lived at. And if you move, it's a very simple disconnect. You can actually leave the things connected, plug up the drain, turn off the water coming into the unit, which is just a little blue valve. Basically, you just switch off, disconnect the tubing, and you're done. And then you could bring the unit with you to your next place. So it is very easy to set up, very easy to use, very easy to service, and it's open source. And I forgot to mention, it is extremely affordable. I've looked at various different water filters over the years. I've bought several of them, and they tend to be very overpriced. Ours is very reasonable for what you get. This was not private labeled from a water show or from Alibaba. We custom built this, and it was blood, sweat, and tears for 2 to 3 years to finally bring this to fruition. So I'm really happy to share this with you. You can find that at mitolife.co. Currently, all of our products are in stock. The elk velvet antler just came back in stock. If you're a man and you feel like you need more yang energy, maybe you have low testosterone symptoms, highly recommend experimenting with Panacea, our Shilajit tablets. I take 5 every day with my morning coffee after breakfast, and then take some elk velvet. I like to take 4 capsules at a time and see how you're feeling after a month of that protocol. So that's it. I will see you guys on next Friday's show. Stay supercharged.